After battling a global-scale alien fleet with the help of Reiko Kashima, Okarun and the gang finally found one of his golden balls. On the other hand, Turbo Granny found some kind of chip on the ground, and because of this she got the information about the globalist and one particular character who was named Count Saint-Germain. In this video, we'll get to know some familiar characters as Momo and Okarun continue their search for the remaining testicle. Let's get started. It seems like a game is taking place in the ISA house, while Okarun is lying down, and Sakata and Aira are eating at the side. We can see that Turbo Granny has a headgear on, and she's shouting, "One for all for one." While holding Okarun's family jewel, Seiko told her to bring it on, saying they'll destroy her, but Okarun pleaded for them to wait. He asked why the return of his family jewels always has to be weird, and if he couldn't get them back in a normal way. Gigi answered that one person needs to sacrifice for the sake of the group, but Okarun said they weren't listening to him. Momo then said that victory is only achieved when everyone fulfills their responsibility. Turbo Granny charged while singing "I Need a Hero" by Bonnie Tyler, and Momo and Gigi tried to catch Turbo Granny, with Okarun saying they were crazy. Momo tried to block Turbo Granny's path, but she just jumped over her while continuing to sing. In the next scene, we see Momo and Gigi lying down after trying to catch Turbo Granny, and Vamola just stood and watched. Seiko was the last one Turbo Granny needed to pass, and she said if Turbo Granny thought she could defeat her, she should think again. It was shown that Seiko was about to catch Turbo Granny, and she did it while shouting "Save." However, Seiko was surprised that what she was holding was a crab, so she was confused and asked what it was. Turbo Granny called her a moron and said she snuck home a crab from Hokkaido, because when there's a crab, Seiko's body reacts instinctively. It seems Turbo Granny won, and she returned Okarun's family jewel, who was shouting in pain. Okarun said his testicle was back, and he thanked them. Seiko was annoyed because Turbo Granny tricked her using the crab, while Momo said Gigi's tackles were weak, and he said "Soe" to her, which Vamola imitated. Okarun asked if that debriefing was necessary, and Turbo Granny answered "No side," which means their rugby game was over. Let's move to another place, where a very large door with a beautiful design was shown. There was a woman whose picture was being taken, when suddenly the door opened, and a man wearing a suit came out. People were staring at him, and he put on his glasses while walking away, as people took pictures of him. Wherever the man went, people kept staring at him, and when he saw an elderly woman standing, he made her sit in his seat on the train, and he just stood at the side. He went to Okarun's school and entered the staff room. He greeted someone there with "Good morning," which was returned to him. The woman beside him was about to talk to him, but he beat her to it and said his name was Saint-Germain. Then, it seems someone was surprised, saying his chair was missing, so he asked where it was. We learned that his name is Mr. Murakami because the woman beside Saint-Germain greeted him "Good morning." Mr. Murakami said his chair was just there yesterday, and he was thinking all sorts of things. The female teacher said she has a feeling Mr. Murakami's chair was nearby. Mr. Murakami tried to talk to Saint-Germain, who immediately introduced himself. Mr. Murakami asked if that was Saint-Germain's chair, but he quickly apologized and called Saint-Germain deputy head teacher and continued looking for his chair. One teacher couldn't believe they had such a handsome teacher there, and another said she had no memory of a new teacher, but she remembers the name Mr. Saint-Germain. Let's move to another place in the school, where Vamola said she likes Pampy drink. Momo asked if that's how Vamola often talks now, even though she's the one who's usually with her. Vamola said she doesn't say the word "me," and Okarun apologized to her, saying he was the one who taught Vamola that. Sakata was also there, and he said he wouldn't allow it, and it needed to be remedied later. Then, Vamola revealed to them that Turbo Granny taught her how to say "you shithead," telling her to say it often, and Sakata said Vamola didn't need to remember that. According to Momo, everyone in her house has a foul mouth, so it's better for Vamola to talk like Okarun. Okarun asked if that's really what Momo thinks, and while they were talking, Sakata was teaching something to Vamola. Then, Momo said she was thinking about where Okarun's other family jewel might be, and Okarun answered that he didn't know. So maybe he needed to buy a smartphone and use social media. Momo said they might find it through gossip. One example is Vamola, who was a result of the gossip about the ghost of the apartment block. and that story only circulated in Maiko's contact group. Besides that, Turbo Granny only lost Okarun's family jewels within Kamigo City, which Okarun said was correct. Sakata interjected in their conversation, saying if that's the case, they should start a school club, which Momo didn't understand. Sakata explained that they would create a place for gathering information. It would be like an occult club, and that would be the most efficient, but Momo said it was lame because a group chat could do the same thing. Nevertheless, Sakata argued that if they were to gather in the courtyard again the next time something happened, and Momo said that would be embarrassing, but school clubs were the same. She asked if club activities didn't need a lofty goal or something, and Okarun said if that's the case, what if the club was for historical or cultural research? After all, he said, occultism is the study of the mysterious and unexplained. Occultism involves thinking about various things, from ethnic origin to regional history, food, climate, and physics. Sakata said if they're going to talk about history, they should include the history of robot evolution and kaiju 2 according to Okarun, and takoyaki octopus dumplings for Vamola. Because of this, Momo told them they just wanted a hangout spot for their own interests. Nevertheless, she agreed, but she asked who would be their faculty supervisor. In the next scene, Mr. Murakami was with Mr. Saint-Germain, and he told Momo and the others that Saint-Germain accepts the role as faculty supervisor of their club, so they should be grateful, but it seems Okarun and Momo don't know him. Then, they asked Mr. Saint-Germain why he accepted to be their advisor. Momo said she was having trouble remembering Mr. Saint-Germain, so she asked him what class he teaches and how long he had been at the school. Momo was suspicious of Mr. Saint-Germain, and she said there was something fishy about him. Mr. Saint-Germain said, "Very nice," which confused Momo. He said that when Momo feels better, he wants her to blow the conch until she can't anymore, which Momo didn't understand. Mr. Saint-Germain said Momo's willingness to explore things she likes is wonderful. Then he asked Momo if she was that interested in him, and if she wanted to know about him. Momo answered yes, so Mr. Saint-Germain asked if it was regardless of the cost, and Momo said she thought so. Mr. Saint-Germain said that was nice, and Momo asked what his deal was. Mr. Saint-Germain answered that in this world, every conceivable mystery exists, such as spirits, paranormal abilities, urban legends, UFOs, ancient civilizations, and alternate worlds. He wants to investigate and solve all of them, but their lives are too short for that. He added that he realized if he cooperates with people who have the same goal, achieving that goal would be faster. He said that was the reason why he accepted to be the advisor of Okarun's History and Culture Research Club, but he took it back and said the quest was the condition for why he would be their advisor. He hoped they wouldn't disappoint him, and he would show them their club room. Mr. Saint-Germain took Okarun and the others to their club room, and Momo didn't seem impressed. Their club room looked like a small stockroom, next to a lot of trash. Mr. Saint-Germain told them to make themselves at home there, and Sakata asked if it was true and if it wasn't just a storage room. Mr. Saint-Germain said they could clean up the stuff inside. So Momo asked where they would put it. Mr. Saint-Germain answered that if they could, they should move the items to the newly built storage room behind the school, which surprised Momo. She asked if the only reason their club was approved was to move those items, and Sakata asked if that's how adults do things, but Mr. Saint-Germain just answered them with nice. Sakata asked Momo if they would do it, and Momo asked would anyone, while Mr. Saint-Germain interjected, saying they would do it. Vamola said they should do it, and Okarun said the same, but Momo didn't want to do it because it was weird. They started moving the items, and we can see that Vamola used her suit while Okarun transformed into his Turbo Granny form. Momo also used her powers, and Okarun's class rep seemed surprised to see him in his Turbo Granny form. On the other hand, Sakata's back was hurting, and Momo was getting angry that Mr. Saint-Germain was just sitting. Okarun told Momo that what they were doing was a bit thrilling, and Momo didn't seem to agree with him. Okarun said Mr. Saint-Germain was different from other teachers, and the word that suited him was menacing. According to Momo, she didn't like Mr. Saint-Germain, and she asked where he came from, to which Okarun replied that maybe he must have been around. Momo said she couldn't remember seeing Mr. Saint-Germain before, but she knew his name. She asked Okarun what was up with that, and she saw some people kissing. She was very surprised by what she saw, so Okarun turned to look, but she held his head to face her and told him not to look there. Because of what Momo did, It looked like she was about to kiss Okarun, and it was clear from their faces that they thought about it, which made things suddenly awkward. Momo said she suddenly became self-conscious, and she thought again that Okarun had seen her letter, so she asked why he wasn't talking about it. To her eyes, Okarun seemed nonchalant, but in truth, he was panicking too and didn't know what to do. Ever since he told Vamola about his feelings, he felt something in his heart whenever he looked at Momo. Then, Momo started punching Okarun, so Okarun asked what she was doing, but she didn't stop, so Okarun asked again. She held Okarun's hand tightly, looking very nervous, and stared at him deeply, which made Okarun ask what was going on while avoiding Momo's gaze. Momo tried to remind Okarun about it, but to no avail. Besides that, Momo still didn't want to take her eyes off Okarun, and Okarun was asking what Momo wanted, while still avoiding her gaze. Momo asked if Okarun had seen her letter, but not directly, so Okarun didn't get it. Momo insisted that it is it, and told Okarun to stop playing dumb. She told Okarun it was time for them to talk about it, while forcing him to look at her, but of course Okarun still didn't get it, so he was asking what Momo was referring to. Momo kept insisting that Okarun already knew, and Okarun said they needed to clean the club room. So Momo told him not to change the topic, and she brought it back to the letter, but Okarun still didn't get it because Momo wasn't saying it directly. Momo told Okarun to put his hands to the side. So Okarun asked what for, and she answered to just do it. She said she would put a lie detector on Okarun, who had no idea what was happening. Then, Momo put her head on Okarun's chest, who couldn't believe what was happening. Momo said Okarun was lying about not knowing, because his heart was beating fast. But Okarun defended that it was naturally fast because a girl was pressed against his chest. Because of that, Momo asked if it would speed up if another girl did it, and Okarun answered that it goes without saying. Momo got upset, so she punched Okarun and walked out. At that moment, Okarun realized he couldn't muster up the courage in front of Momo, and he called himself pathetic. Then, someone called him, and it was the class rep, who had something to tell him, and asked if he was a vampire. Okarun was confused by the class rep's question, and she said that Okarun might think she's strange, but there are times when Okarun looks like a handsome vampire to her. Okarun asked what the class rep meant, who seemed to regret what she said, so she apologized to Okarun and said she might just be weird. She explained that she saw him seem to turn into a vampire back then, and when he was lifting things earlier, it looked like Okarun transformed. Okarun then asked when he started looking like a vampire to the class rep, and if anything triggered it. The class rep answered that she didn't know, and she only started to see it since she picked up the gold ball, which greatly surprised Okarun, who immediately asked about the gold ball. The class rep got scared of Okarun and thought that she was about to be bitten by a handsome vampire. She saw herself as a woman tied up in a vampire's castle, with Okarun as the vampire. Then, Okarun supposedly used his hands to make her his plaything and shouted at her in a form of verbal torment. She added that she couldn't do anything to stop Okarun from making her his nourishment. Okarun said he wouldn't do such a thing, and the class rep was surprised that Okarun could read minds. But Okarun said the class rep was saying it out loud, who then pleaded with him not to embarrass her further. Okarun told the class rep not to think about it anymore, and asked if she had the family jewel or not. The class rep didn't understand what Okarun was referring to, so he just called it the golden ball that he was asking about. The class rep answered that she took it to the police box because it looked valuable, which surprised Okarun. Okarun felt relieved by what the class rep said, and he said it would be safe in the police box as lost property. The class rep then asked if Okarun was familiar with it, and Okarun had trouble answering, but he said it was like a lump of spiritual energy, which stunned the class rep, and Okarun seemed like he wanted to take back what he said. Then, Okarun asked if the class rep believed in such things, but he quickly told her to forget he said anything, and asked which police box it was. The class rep said she believed in spirits, which Okarun couldn't believe. The class rep added that that's what she wanted to ask Okarun about. Since she found the golden ball and Okarun started looking like a vampire, she's been constantly hit with a bad feeling. It's as if something was riding on her back. It felt so heavy that she can't even stand straight. It's been happening more frequently as days pass. Since that happened, Okarun started looking like a vampire, so she thought there might be a connection between the two things. But she was worried that if she said something, Okarun would think she's a weirdo, so she was having trouble mustering up the courage, and Okarun said he understood. He said that from that point on, they should freely ask each other anything, because he also had a lot of questions for the class rep, and she agreed. Let's move to a police box, where a police officer is saying that the item being looked for by the person he's talking has been collected. It turns out to be Okarun, and he can't believe the golden ball has been collected. The class rep asked who collected it, but the police officer said he couldn't say because it was private information. He added that the two shouldn't think about stealing it from whoever collected it. They left, and Okarun was wondering who could have collected it. The class rep said it was strange, because to collect lost property, one needs to show proof to get the item. Okarun agreed. He said they would usually ask detailed questions, and to an ordinary person, it would look like just a normal golden ball. Even he himself didn't know how to prove it was his. So he said it's possible it's still in the police box, and no one collected it. They talked about the police officer, and the class rep asked if he was suspicious, and if Okarun thought it was possible he was lying. Okarun said the golden ball might still be there, so they need to check it to be sure, so the class rep asked how. Okarun answered that he would ask Momo, because she can see auras. Then, something suddenly happened that surprised them both, and we see a large creature behind the class rep as she falls. Okarun said that must be the thing the class rep was talking about, so he used his powers to enter the telephone lines and attack that creature, but to his surprise, his attack had no effect on it. In the next scene, someone is asking Momo why she's pissed off, and Momo answers that she's not, while she's eating. The one asking is her grandmother, and she asked Vamola if something happened to Momo at school. Vamola answered that they had Japanese that day, so that's what Seiko thought was the reason. Turbo Granny was asking what more could a doomed son of a bitch was worried about, and Momo asked why the idiot, referring to Turbo Granny, was talking. Turbo Granny asked what was up with Momo's vocabulary, saying it was weak, which angered Momo, who told Turbo Granny to shut up and challenged her to a fight. Because of this, her grandmother told her to stop and take a bath so she could go to sleep, while Turbo Granny continued teasing. Momo was very angry, while Turbo Granny was delighted with what she did. Vamola called Turbo Granny, saying she should sit down because it's dinner time, while Seiko called Turbo Granny Granny and told her to apologize. Turbo Granny got angry at Seiko calling her Granny, saying why Granny when Seiko was old too. It was shown that Momo slammed her room door shut, and Seiko challenged Turbo Granny, but Vamola calmed the two grandmothers down. Momo jumped onto her bed, and she thought of Okarun. She was kicking her feet, saying she didn't like Okarun because of what he had said to her earlier. She created a fantasy where Okarun was coaxing her while she was sulking, and Okarun held her hand, about to say, "I love you," but her grandmother suddenly called her. She told Seiko to be quiet and called her a turd, but her grandmother said Okarun was there. Momo stood up and fixed herself before going downstairs. She said of all things, Okarun would show up out of the blue, and Turbo Granny greeted her, teasingly asking if she was feeling okay, so she told her to be quiet. Momo asked Okarun what was going on, and Okarun was carrying the class rep, saying something bad happened to her, which surprised Momo. The class rep woke up in Momo's house, while Okarun was eating, and Turbo Granny asked her what she was looking at. The class rep couldn't believe that Turbo Granny was talking, and Momo told her to get over it. Seiko said she hadn't seen the class rep before, but told her to eat. Turbo Granny then scared the class rep, saying she was talking to her, and asked if she wanted to die. The class rep asked how it was normal for them to have a talking cat, and Turbo Granny again said she would kill the class rep. Momo told Turbo Granny to stop teasing the class rep, then the class rep thought that the cat may just be a handsome vampire in disguise. She said Turbo Granny would look at her with lustful eyes and dirty talk her, more aggressively than Okarun. She thought that Turbo Granny should stop looking at her like that, or she won't be able to handle it. The class rep returned to reality, and Turbo Granny asked her who she was calling a vampire, because she wasn't like that. The class rep thought Turbo Granny could read her mind, so she must really be a vampire, but Turbo Granny said she was saying it out loud. Momo called the class rep crazy, while Turbo Granny told her to look at her, and she fearfully answered, "Yes, sir."
Hoy! Bitawan mo yan!
In the next scene, Seiko said something about the Onbusuman, and Momo asked what it was. So Seiko explained that it was a yokai, called the Old Man Crying in the Old Days. It was said to be the spirit of a child who died in infancy, and they climb on people's backs as a way of seeking love. If that spirit is loved, they can rest in peace forever, but if the spirit is pushed away, their loathing continues to grow, until they crush the person they're haunting. Because Seiko mentioned a baby, Momo asked if the class rep had a secret love child, but the class rep answered that she didn't, and she hadn't even held hands with a boy yet. Seiko said something must have happened, so she asked the class rep to tell them about her youth, because if she didn't know the origins of the yokai, she wouldn't know how to get rid of it. The class rep sadly said that she lost a friend, and it was her fault. Then, we were taken to the past, where someone was praising a person named Sawaki for their great singing. We learned that Sawaki is the class rep, and one of her classmates was saying she could become a pro, while others were requesting Sawaki to sing Bonbonzaka 46. A girl said she wanted to become an idol, and invited Sawaki to become an idol with her. She said her specialty was dancing, and if they combined it with Sawaki singing, they could be awesome. Then, they went to another place, and the girl taught Sawaki how to dance, while Sawaki sang. In the next scene, the two were walking home, and one of them said she heard that junior idol auditions were coming up, and if they were chosen, they could be on TV. The girl with the hair bow tie also said they should audition, and she asked Sawaki, who was also called Rin-chan or Rin. Rin agreed to her friend's offer, and in the next scene, she was cooking food, which she served to an old woman. Then, she also washed the dishes, did laundry, and worked on her math homework. After that, a woman came home, who thanked Rin for being a great help. We learned that this woman was the daughter-in-law of the old woman, who asked if Tadami-chi had come home, and the daughter-in-law answered that Tadami-chi wouldn't be coming back. It was shown that Tadami-chi had died, and the daughter-in-law told the old woman to give her a minute, and she would bathe her. The daughter-in-law was actually Rin's mother, and Rin wanted to tell her mother something about next Sunday, but her mother said she had work next Sunday. So she asked Rin to take care of her grandmother, and what Rin was referring to was the idol audition with her friend. Rin's mother said she was very lucky to have Rin because she was a lifesaver, and she couldn't work without her because who would cook? Then, she thanked Rin while hugging her, and Rin said, "Sure." In the next scene, Rin was practicing with the hair bow tie girl and her other classmates. Someone said what they were doing was cool, and they should see if they could sing while dancing. The speaker added that now that Rin was there, they would surely pass the audition. We learned that the hair bow tie girl's name is Mai, and she was encouraging Rin, but Rin told her she couldn't go to the audition, which shocked everyone. Mai said Rin shouldn't worry about how to get there, because her mother would drive them, and they would pick up Rin at 8 in the morning, but Rin said that wasn't the reason. Rin explained that she needed to do housework, and she couldn't escape from it. One girl said Rin's mother could do that, but Rin said she was working, and another said it was Sunday, while someone else asked about Rin's father. They said Rin was just lying, and that her mother was lazy. We were then shown Rin's mother asleep at the table, working on receipts while writing down their expenses. Rin then asked her companions what the point of being an idol was, and if what they were doing was really that great. They couldn't believe what Rin said, and it seemed like Mai's heart was broken, while Rin was very sad. The girls with Rin got angry, and one said Rin was wrong to back out at the last minute, which another agreed with, saying Rin was just hanging out with Mai to use her popularity. They also asked Rin if she didn't want to become an idol with Mai. They turned their backs on Rin and called her a traitor. They added that it was a waste of time, and they wished they hadn't become friends with someone like Rin. In the next scene, Rin's grandmother asked her for water and looked for Tadami-chi, but Rin said he hadn't come home yet. Rin got water for her grandmother, who thanked her. Rin's grandmother also apologized because Rin probably wanted to play with her friends, but Rin said not to worry about that because she didn't have any friends. She added that she liked staying at home and reading books anyway. Time passed, and Rin decided to dance in front of her mirror, imagining she was performing with Mai, and she was crying while doing it. While Rin was dancing, the telephone suddenly rang, and she was still crying when she went to answer it. Rin answered the call and learned that it was Mai's mother. She said they were at the audition venue, but Mai was so nervous that she couldn't move. Mai's friends were trying to encourage her, telling Mai that everything would be okay, but it wasn't having any effect. Mai's mother added that Mai couldn't do it without Rin. She said she could call Rin's mother, and she asked Rin to do the audition with Mai. At that moment, Rin remembered her mother's hug and gratitude, and she was about to tell Mai's mother that she couldn't leave, but suddenly someone told her to go. She turned to look at who said that and realized it was her grandmother, who said that she's a grown-up too. She said she could stay at home alone, and that Rin needed to live a life without regrets. Rin returned to the present time, and she said that she told Mai's mother she would go to the audition. So Mai's mother came to her house to pick her up, but on the way there was an accident that destroyed the car Mai's mother was driving, with Mai inside. She added that if she hadn't said she would go, Mai might still be alive. Seiko said it seemed Mai had become an ombudsman, and she guessed that the family jewel had awakened Rin's supernatural sensitivity, which is why she felt Mai's presence. She also said that Rin shouldn't let her guard down, because the memories of Onbusuman when they were alive gradually fade away, until all that's left is the hatred that prevents them from dealing their regrets. Their fixation becomes resentment, and they become beings that inevitably kill their hosts, which made Rin look very scared. She added that if Rin just left Mai alone, she would end up killing Rin. She also said that an ombudsman was more dangerous than they thought, but Momo said she had been watching Rin's aura for a while, and she couldn't see anything that looked like an evil spirit. Seiko said that Onbusuman is a coward, so hiding is its forte, and they need to do something to bring it out. She added that the regret Mai was holding onto was about the audition, so for now, they needed to dispel it at the audition venue. After that, they went to the school, so Momo asked why they were there. Seiko answered that there were many spirits in that school, and she asked if they had heard about the 7 mysteries. She said that an ombudsman is the spirit of a child, and it's easier to bring it out in a place with many spirits. Momo then asked where Vamola was, and Seiko said Vamola was a feeble child, so she was left at home with Turbo Granny. We are then shown Vamola sleeping next to Turbo Granny, and Momo said her grandmother was wrong because Vamola was super tough. In the next scene, we see Momo and the others looking very surprised because they saw the Hayashi band saying they should do it now. The 3 really couldn't believe the band was there. Seiko welcomed them and said they should get started, and the 3 were surprised again. What they saw was a very large parade float being pushed by men, and they told Seiko they had arrived. Seiko told them to park it to the side, and Momo asked why it was there, and her grandmother answered that it was their way to get to the audition venue, which Rin and Okarun couldn't believe. Momo said that ombudsmen can manipulate gravity, and they draw evil spirits to themselves, growing larger and crushing the person they're haunting due to the weight. She added that when the ombudsman leaves Rin because of the Hayashi performance, all the spirits will be drawn to it, and they will attack. We were shown a map of their plan, and Seiko explained that they would continuously avoid the spirits. While doing that, they would pass by the place of Mai's accident as an attempt to remind her of the times when she was alive. Then they would sprint to the audition site. They all got on the parade float, but Seiko didn't let Okarun ride because he was on float pulling duty, and Okarun asked if he was doing it alone. One of the float pullers answered him not to be ridiculous because he couldn't do it alone. The vocalist of the Hayashi band asked if they were ready, and the whole group started playing. At that moment, Rin suddenly seemed to be having difficulty, so Momo asked if she was okay. Then, Momo was suddenly surprised, and she said the ombudsman was there, riding on the back of Rin. Then, they heard rumbles, and someone was shouting, "Give back." Seiko said they were there, so they should start moving, and Okarun said to wait, because he was still taking off his shoes. The men started pulling the parade float, and we see that the school transformed into a large creature, trying to catch the parade float, while Okarun was still on the side removing his shoes. Momo panicked at what she saw, and she said they would be crushed, but it was shown that the school-turned creature didn't succeed because the float parade had a force field. Momo was impressed, and Seiko explained that the Hayashi band's performance was creating a barrier, so they no longer needed to worry about that large creature. Momo said that was badass, and her grandmother said their problem was the smaller creatures, which Momo didn't get. We learned that what Seiko was referring to was the Kinjiro Ninomiya statue, which was lifting the school. Besides that, Momo and Rin also saw them inside the schoolrooms. Then a Ninomiya threw a log at them, so Seiko told Momo to defend. However, Momo didn't succeed because something exploded next to the parade float, causing those inside to scream, and Seiko said they should hurry. In the next scene, the Ninomias came out, chasing the float, and they also had their own vehicles. We can also see that the Hayashi band continues playing for their force field, and Seiko uses her baseball bat to deflect the logs, while Momo uses her powers to defend against the explosions, and Okarun is at the front of the float pulling using his Turbo Granny powers. The Ninomias also jumped towards the float, and one exploded due to something that seemed like a water jug, while another was approaching. However, Seiko bounced it off, hitting the Ninomiya with her bat. She told Momo to protect the band, because if they're taken out, their barrier is toast. Momo replied that the barrier wasn't working anymore, and told Seiko to just look at the Ninomiyas. Seiko said that the mesh of their barrier was uneven, so small things could get through. Then, an explosion shook the parade float, causing Rin to fall, but Momo caught her, telling her to hold on tight, and Rin shouted that she couldn't take it anymore. Seiko then asked how the wheels were, and Momo answered that they were okay because she was guarding them. She added that the Ninomiyas were appearing out of the woodwork, and they couldn't hold them off, so she asked her grandmother to kill the large creature. Seiko said that wasn't their objective, because they needed to ensure that the Ombudsman could finally rest in peace, and they needed to do that with love. Another explosion occurred, flinging the ground, and it looked like a large rock was about to hit the vocalist of the Hayashi band. It did hit the vocalist, shocking the whole band and Seiko, causing him to drop the microphone, which hit Rin's head. Seiko told the band to continue playing, and Momo asked what happened. According to the guitarist, the vocalist was out cold, so Momo asked Seiko what they would do about the barrier. Seiko ordered Rin to get the microphone, and she used the power of Nessie to throw Rin up to the band's performance area, and Momo asked what her grandmother was doing. Rin seemed to panic because of the height of where she was, and Seiko said they should lower the vocalist to a safer place. Then, she told Rin to sing, and she looked very surprised. Rin said she couldn't do it, while Seiko and Momo were lowering the vocalist, and Seiko said only Rin could do it, so she should sing. According to Rin, she said she couldn't sing since Mai's accident happened, and she looked like she was about to vomit after saying that. Okarun said the float suddenly got heavier since the vocalist stopped singing, so he was slowing down. Another part of the float exploded, and Seiko was surprised because a wheel came off, but luckily Momo caught it. She used her powers to hold both wheels, so Okarun praised her, and we can see that the number of men pushing the float was gradually decreasing. Others said they couldn't continue anymore, so Okarun would have to take care of it, and he said, "Bummer." The float pushers completely let go, and one asked Seiko for a date. Then, we see Momo shout, "Oh no," because they were caught by the school creature. Seiko and Okarun were also shocked by what happened, and it was shown that a ton more emerging Ninomiyas came to attack the float, while Momo used her powers to push away the hand of the giant creature. Her grandmother told her to continue what she was doing so they wouldn't be crushed, so she increased her effort in pushing the giant's hands. Seiko then told Okarun not to let the Ninomiyas get close, so Okarun charged at them to keep them away. Seiko also ordered Rin to sing, because not just anyone could perform in the Hayashi band, but Rin seemed to be struggling. She looked like she was about to vomit again, and she said she couldn't do it even though she wanted to, but every time she tried, she thought Mai's ghost was calling her a traitor. She shouted that she wasn't a traitor, but Mai said that Rin always asked what was so great about being idols, laughing at her dreams. She answered that wasn't the reason, and she said that it's because they insulted her mother, but Mai said Rin was just afraid of being left out by her friends, so she became a people pleaser, and Rin replied that she wasn't like that. Rin said she wanted to go to the audition, but her family was important too, and there was nothing she could do. She asked Mai what she should have done, and Rin returned to reality, where she was crying because of what was happening, and someone was telling her that what she was doing was right. It was Seiko, and she said Rin should let those emotions out and turn them into a song to fight the Ninomiyas. She said Rin should let everyone hear the feelings that were filling her up. Seiko added that Rin had given all that effort for her family and friends, and she hadn't complained even once. She knew Rin had worked hard, but she was the only one who suffered, and that wasn't right. She told Rin to sing her feelings in a song, and Momo said her grandmother should do something because she was at her limit, and they were about to be crushed. At that moment, their barriers suddenly returned. repelling the Ninomias and putting cracks in the giant creature's fingers. This surprised the Hayashi band, as well as Seiko, Okarun, and Momo. We learn that Rin thought of her mother again while picking up the microphone, and she also thought of her dream of singing. Rin began to sing her emotions while she was crying. They were falling because the giant creature had let them go. So Seiko told Momo they needed a cushion. They landed safely, and Momo boasted about it to Okarun, who praised her for what she did. Momo added that the class rep could really wail, and it was awesome, while Okarun said it was totally rockin'. Rin continued singing, and it looked like particles were coming out of her. She also apologized to Mai, and said she knew Mai resented her, so she asked if Mai didn't want to hear her song. She added that she was serious, and she wanted to become an idol with Mai, so she wasn't lying about her feelings. Then, it was shown that the Onbusuman came out from behind Rin while she was singing. Rin called out to Mai, but she suddenly fell face first due to the weight of the Onbusuman, causing her to stop singing. Momo worried for her, so she asked why she stopped singing. Momo saw the Onbusuman, which made her more concerned, and she said it was getting bigger. Seiko then said that the giant creature was still chasing them, so Rin should stand up, but Rin replied that she couldn't because Mai was pressing down on her back and voice. Rin told Mai that if she had something to say to her, she should say it. She said she knew Mai held a grudge against her, and she asked Mai to listen to her. She said she also had something to say to Mai, and she would double what she was going to say to her. Suddenly, Seiko shouted that they were near the accident site, which startled Rin, and Seiko said that once they get there, the Ombudsman's memories before it became an evil spirit should be revived. They just needed to hold out until they got there, but Momo argued that they couldn't do it because there were too many Ninomias. Then, another Ninomiya jumped towards their float, and its companion was about to follow. So Momo panicked, but luckily Okarun arrived and kicked the Ninomiya. Momo praised him, asking what pulled the float, and Okarun answered that it was the work of the law of inertia. The Ombudsman said it would kill Rin, but someone objected, saying wait, which surprised Rin. It said it would come along, and we learned that it was Mai's voice, who was forbidden by her mother to come. She added that Mai should just wait there with her friends, and she would be the one to pick up Rin. Mai's mother also said that when Mai's name is called, she should go ahead without her. She would be okay, and she shouldn't lose confidence. However, Mai didn't agree and insisted on coming along. She said she needed to apologize to Rin because she said many bad things to her. On the way to pick up Rin, Mai said she couldn't understand how difficult Rin's situation was, and she couldn't take her side in the state of things, so she asked how she could be her friend. The Ombudsman transformed into a woman, and it was the older version of Mai, who was also crying like Rin because of the emotions they were feeling. One of them said she remembered what she wanted to say to the other, and she apologized while they hugged each other. We learned that Mai was the one speaking, and she asked Rin if they could be friends. Rin stammered in response, saying of course they could, and they both laughed and wiped their tears. While this was happening, more Ninomiyas were jumping towards the float, and they were also being sandwiched by the Ninomiya vehicles, while Okarun was still pulling the float. Seiko said the float was breaking down so Rin should hurry with her singing. At that rate, they wouldn't reach the audition venue. Rin asked if Mai could do anything about the large creature because they were being drawn to her, but Mai answered that she couldn't do anything about it, which surprised Rin. Nevertheless, Mai said it would be okay, because they had Rin's song, and she invited Rin to sing it together. Rin smiled and said they should do it, and they both held the microphone. Then, they both sang, creating a barrier which repelled the Ninomiyas, and they finally defeated the giant creature. The two were overjoyed because the performance they had dreamed of since they were children finally came true. In the next scene, the float arrived at the audition center, and it immediately broke down. Momo seemed relieved, and she said they couldn't have lasted another second in that battle. Rin looked for Mai, and she seemed surprised when she saw her, surrounded by particles. She told Mai that singing and dancing with her was so much fun, and she wasn't lying when she said she wanted to become an idol with Mai. Mai said she was envious of Rin, and they both returned to being children. Mai said Rin always looked nervous, but when she sang, she was so dignified, as if she had no doubts at all, but she was different. She was always anxious, worrying that people wouldn't like her. She added that she had no confidence in herself, and being an idol was something that made her mother happy. She was just trying to live up to her expectations, so she was the real traitor. Rin remembered the time I called her a traitor, and she said I wasn't a traitor. She said I was always kind to them, and she was bright and cheerful. I was an idol to everyone, and they looked up to her, but it wasn't because of my sweetness. It was because I desperately tried to meet expectations, and she gave her all, so she looked cool, and that was the reason. As I was saying this, my spirit was gradually fading away, until only Rin was left. Seiko stood beside her, comforting her as she cried. From that point on, Rin would remember Mai in her mind for the rest of her life.